My name is Scott Challoner, and you are listening to the Leaders Council podcast for the people who run the country and the people who keep the country running. As regular listeners of our programme will be aware, part of our mission here at the Leaders Council is to bring you a variety of distinct perspectives on leadership, and to this end, we've invited Colin Smith, Director and Head of Planning for Scotland at Turley, onto today's programme. Colin, very warm welcome to you, and by all means, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
It's an immense pleasure having you, Colin, and once again, thanks for your time. Now, you are a full-service planning and development consultancy, which is only really a rough outline of what it is that you do. So just to address the listeners that might not be familiar with the business, what exactly is it in your own words that you're involved with?
Well, really, we promote change in the built environment. We promote through new developments for developers, be it housing, commercial space, hotel, leisure, student accommodation, logistics, everything through planning applications. And we also promote the allocation on a longer term basis, the allocation of land for development around services. We have a core planning service, and that's supported by a range of other services which can be brought to bear depending on circumstances across. In Scotland, we have a very good heritage service based here, but there's also services around economics, business case, sustainability, design, etc., across the UK and Ireland.
Yeah, so you're working in some quite key industries there, and those are sectors that couldn't just, sort of go into that state of hibernation over the last couple of years during COVID. They're very much sort of areas that had to very much carry on. Just to kind of get an idea of how you were affected by the pandemic and some of the lockdown challenges that came about as a result of it, how did you kind of address those and try and get over those to get into the position that you're in today?
Well, really, there was a very swift decision-making at the company leadership in terms of working from home and the technical support to that. So we actually adapted very quickly to working from home requirements, which it seems a long time ago now, came in March 2020. So the team moved to working from home basis. In terms of Scottish business, we carried on reasonably in terms of the volume of work we were doing, reasonably unaffected by COVID. A lot of the applications, once they're in process, they have to carry on. Land promotion deadlines, they have to be met. So our work carried on under very changed personal circumstances for the team, which brought its own separate challenges, really due to the sort of the desocialization on a face-to-face basis of working operation. A lot of what we do is very much around interaction and ideas sparking off each other in a similar way to if we're working in a design environment, that's very much the case. But similarly in the planning context, where it's often about thoughts and strategy and how do we address particular challenges, then the immediacy of the interaction is removed. So a lot of the work was around maintaining contact between people, albeit at home, really just to make sure that primacy, health and well-being, but also there to maintain that interaction and delivery of work, but also their development as well.
Certainly makes sense from my perspective. And, from sort of trying to overcome those challenges and, sort of keep sort of staff morale and concentration high, and obviously make sure that the business was providing those vital services going. Do you feel that you've kind of learned a lot about sort of yourself and your colleagues during this time, and maybe even become more resilient as a business?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's no one here has experienced anything like it before, and so the instantaneous adaptation that you're thrown into, you to a degree, you have to get on with it, but you certainly have to adapt your ways and means of working. And it's interesting to reflect back on some of the changes that were brought to bear. Long days on Teams meetings, which to a degree have carried on but are now easing, but actually people built in new routines around well-being and exercise. I certainly did. I cycled much more than I had since my early years, and I actually cycle a lot less now because we're into a more normalized, starting to get into a more normalized work environment. People found ways to fit their work, extend their working day around well-being and staying busy, particularly during the winter months where it was the days were shorter and you had to get out during the daylight really. And I which I've carried on. I adopted a regular tennis grouping that we started once we were allowed to come out again in COVID, and that's actually carried on, and everyone who's part of it really reflects very positively on that as something that really helped get them through it, because it was not just working in isolation, but the isolation from friends and family was a really difficult thing for people to different degrees. But we certainly learned to support each other through those certainly the early initial pretty difficult days.
Yeah, and it can be a little bit of a double-edged sword, can't it? The work from home situation, because as good as it is that you can obviously fit your work around sort of your own day and your own well-being practices, without sort of kind of self-discipline, if we call it that, it can be quite easy to get bogged down in sort of working through, can't you? Because you haven't taken the time out to sort of commute into an office space, and you're probably working during that time, and perhaps even working a little bit later into the evening as well. So it's also about just sort of managing yourself in those circumstances, isn't it, to really sort of reap the benefits that it provides.
It did. You have to make sure you are building in time for self, as well as covering work, and you learnt the discipline of days on video conferences, which can be really quite exhausting and physically challenging when you are in a sedentary position for a lot longer than you normally would be in an office environment, because you're sat there for 4 or 5 hours largely just looking at a screen. So it wasn't it's not, there are health benefits that can really come from that if you're not making sure you're getting up, staying mobile, physically moving, getting daylight, eating well, etc. So that was for me, that was an important aspect to build in and try and make sure that others were taking time out from the work to just look after themselves.
Exactly right. And moreover as well, the last couple of years has had a sort of significant impact on the construction industry as a sector that, had to carry on during that time. And it's an industry that's had issues with sort of long-standing skill shortages anyway, but there is evidence to say that the pandemic has exacerbated that. We've seen people leaving the industry. We've seen many as well with the advent of Brexit returning to Europe as well, who were maybe working in the sector on the ground and have obviously gone back to their countries of origin now. Has sort of the skill shortage or skills exodus in construction on the ground had a knock-on effect for you and your business on the planning side at all?
It's certainly, we have recruited a couple of times during the last 2 years, which we're fortunate to do, both in terms of just the requirement to do so, and also the people that we did recruit who were very high caliber. Certainly across construction in general, there is a skills shortage, and in professional services, likewise, there is a skills gap at particular levels where it's very challenging to recruit. The phrase "the Great Resignation" has been used to really, I guess, capture the new freedom and flexibility that people feel in certain industries. A lot of times they've been fortunate to be able to adapt very quickly to a working from home environment with a laptop, but that's really engendered them with a real sense of, well, actually, I can change jobs just by sitting still in my own kitchen and do something different. I guess that another thing in construction that's really prevalent just now is the cost of materials, which I guess is influenced by I guess Brexit, without getting too political, but also other world events that have appeared since COVID that have really exacerbated that, and so that there are some significant challenges in the development sector which is, I guess, a broader consideration than just construction, but development in general in terms of resource, people, cost, availability of people, cost of people, and also materials in order to deliver the development that everyone needs, because that includes infrastructure, it includes homes, workspace, and everything that goes with that. And so it does become increasingly challenging to deliver it on a reliable basis.
It is, isn't it? And I suppose with supply chain shocks, I mean, you're kind of at the mercy of global forces and just sort of playing the waiting game until that starts to settle. But obviously with the skills shortage, that's something that, we can do something about as sort of industry, as a country, as education, as government. So from your perspective, what do you think sort of needs to be done to try and sort of bring more talent into the industry first and foremost?
I think it's broadening two things really, broadening the reach of the development industry in terms of diversifying the workforce, encouraging a broader section of society to engage in it, and skills and training allied to that as we grow the numbers who are interested in it. I think in part by just raising the importance of it and the range of opportunities that sit within the development sector, and to get that interest and also provide and support training opportunities for those who do express an interest through traditional routes, training, university and college, but also perhaps non-traditional routes through apprenticeships and other learning opportunities that can bring people in, because we're competing against other industries that are facing the same challenges and are taking initiatives of their own to make them more attractive to new talent. So it's an ever-changing picture, but certainly a key aspect of business these days is having a real focus on identifying and retaining talent as part of the growth and sustaining that business.
Exactly. And, when you do find the skilled talent that is out there, I suppose because a lot of people's priorities have changed as a result of COVID, the wants and needs of the employee or the prospective employee have changed somewhat, haven't they? So there's a lot more emphasis now on what are your corporate social responsibility policies, what are your well-being policies, what is this employer going to offer me per se? And obviously leaders in the recruitment environment, which is very challenging at the moment, also have to take that into consideration, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Because people these are in the market, they are looking for, certainly tend to be looking for a lot more beyond just immediate reward. There's the hard stuff in recruitment around reward, but there's also the as you say the well-being, the softer aspect, well-being, vision, values, how they go about their business, and how they look after their people and those they deal with. So those aspects are rapidly gaining just as much importance as just the hard stuff around reward.
They are absolutely right. And, in this kind of, volatile period that we're facing as we've come out of the acute phase of the pandemic, and we're still sort of trying to deal with that kind of hangover effect, as it were. I'd be interested to understand, just before we wrap up, Colin, what sort of some of your priorities at Turley are going to be over the next 12 months as we hopefully see some form of recovery, and where ideally you'd like to be by this time next year.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I can speak to the Scottish business unit where we have done well within the last couple of years in terms of growing our business, consolidating where we were, growth in certain key sectors, particularly in the build-to-rent and the return to hospitality and leisure part of the industry. And certainly the focus of the next 12 months is in the context of coming out of a pandemic and now having to, and which was preceded by Brexit, and now having to deal with war in Ukraine and all the ramifications of that, the terrible things that are happening there. It's really a focus on delivery of quality of service, looking after the team in Scotland, looking after our clients in Scotland, continuing to deliver good work and to attract new business, and to sustain that through, in 12 months' time, it's very difficult to know what the economic context we're working with in 12 months' time. Albeit we know there's going to be rising costs driven by inflation as it increases towards the end of the year. Energy costs are forecast to continue to rise and not level out until about 12 months' time. And it's sustaining a business in that context is difficult. We just have to focus on what is core, and that is the work we have, the work we want to deliver for our clients, and the team we have here.
And hopefully that is carried out to the best possible effect. And, we do get to that point where hopefully we see things start to cool. And, I think as we start to, see the fog clearing and we start to understand in 12 months' time, hopefully what trajectory we're going to be going on, I relish the opportunity, perhaps, Colin, to welcome you back onto the show and just kind of see where you're at and how things are getting on behind the scenes.
I would be delighted to report back in a year's time and just to see where we are.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. It's been really informative, certainly having you on the programme with us today. And by all means as well, do take care and do stay safe with all that is still going on.
Thank you very much for your time.
It was indeed a real pleasure welcoming Colin Smith, Director and Head of Planning for Scotland at Turley, onto today's show. And I do hope that everybody tuning in thoroughly enjoyed the interview today. Just to remind listeners tuning into this podcast, if you are the head of an organisation or a business owner yourself, or in any position of authority really, and you do feel that you have your own story to share with us, then we do of course want to hear from you. So you too can also apply to be on the programme to share that story via leaderscouncil.co.uk/apply. Until next time, I have been your host, Scott Challoner, on the Leaders Council podcast today, and to all of our listeners, please take care and goodbye.